I believe endless customers is just a framework that can work for any business. And, if you really care about customers, I know it's something you can get your hands around and implement.
You're listening to the Endless Customers Podcast, brought to you by the team at Impact. Endless Customers is the proven system to become the most known and trusted brand in your market. If you want to start to learn the principles of Endless Customers and how you can implement them in your business, pick up a copy of Endless Customers, a national bestseller wherever books are sold. Ready to start implementing Endless Customers in your business? Talk to Impact about how our coaching program can help you implement Endless Customers to success. And if you want to experience Endless Customers in person, do not miss our upcoming conference, Endless Customers Live, in Chicago, March 30th through April 1st, 2026. Registration is now open. And now, onto the show. Here's your host, Alex Winter.
Today on the show, we're talking with Jim Schultz. Jim is a past client with us here at Impact with the company he founded, Applied Education Systems. Jim started using Endless Customers back in 2014 when it was known as They Ask You Answer, and through that journey accomplished incredible success, dramatically changed his business, and ultimately had a life-changing exit. Jim's also been very active post-exit. Today, he's a Vistas chair, as well as a business coach for small to medium-sized businesses. Jim is one of the most successful people we've had the opportunity to work with here at Impact, and we're really excited to share his story. So let's not waste any more time. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. Jim is a previous client of Impact and has a pretty incredible story of building his own business. And I'd love to share that story, and we can set the stage there. You're also a chair of Vistage, and you coach other CEOs. We have a lot of ground to cover today. So can we start by letting our listeners and our audience know what AES was all about, Applied Education Systems, and just tell people a little bit about your story and your journey with Endless Customers?
Sure, Alex. So I guess I'm going to try to explain this chronologically because it really spans about 15 years, 2010 to, 12 years, 2010 to 2022.
Wow.
So first of all, we had a crisis in 2010. So I founded the company in 1987. So this is 23 years later. And on the outside, we were successful, scaled the company, 40 employees, 10 million in sales, and we were selling a perpetual turnkey solution. It was an upfront purchase by a school district, and it really was curriculum in the career and technical education area, specifically in high school.
Wow.
And what we decided to do in 2010, 2011, our choice, is we decided to go all in on stop selling that perpetual turnkey solution and going to a subscription model. We were intent to go to 100% recurring revenue. So at that time, SaaS had been successful in a number of different verticals. We saw an opportunity to be very different in our market because no one yet was doing a subscription model. So we knew this was going to happen when we went from perpetual license subscription model. We went from 10 million in sales to 0 in 36 months.
Oh my gosh.
We went from 40 employees to 5, and we lost $3 million. And I will just say, it's something I wouldn't even wish on my enemy.
Oh, wow.
Very difficult. So here we are, say 2012, no capital for traditional sales and marketing, no feet on the street salespeople. And up to that point, with the perpetual license, we had been selling through independent sales reps that represented us in different states. So going to subscription, independent sales reps, we weren't going to use them. We were going to do it direct. And we had a number of major problems, but the worst problem we had was we had no way to generate marketing leads.
Wow.
0.
Wow. So you really made the shift and we're expecting to see it just take off, and it basically did the opposite.
We knew it was really going to be tough the first 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
We knew we were going to go to, almost nothing in sales.
Okay.
We knew we were going to have to, go really small. It was almost like starting the company again.
Mm-hmm.
Some people laugh. They said, Jim, you should just went out and started a different company. But we did it within the structure of applied educational system. So
Okay.
here we are. Before we made that change, I believe in reflection, we had a broken system because we were internally focused on our product, our processes, our systems. We talked about helping the independent sales reps, really never talked about the buyers. We didn't even know what questions our customers and potential buyers were asking because it was all funneled through independent sales reps.
Right.
So I heard this guy, Marcus Sheridan, speak on Spin Sucks, a Q&A webinar that Ginny Dietrich was holding. And at that point, Marcus was just starting up with the Sales Lion. And the concept clicked in what he was talking about. It doesn't have to be complicated. And all we have to be is transparent. We have to educate customers. We have to create trust by answering their questions in an unbiased and objective way. To me, that just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I made a call to Marcus right after that webinar, which is totally unlike my personality. And I guess what we realized and what, through working with him, we have to educate our buyers. We need to be educators ourselves. And since we were selling to educators, it just really seemed to fit and made a lot more sense strategically. So, of course, we couldn't afford a sales army. And at that time, it was slow going at first because it was me on content.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you have the resources to hire on a sales team? But it sounds like at the time you didn't.
And by speaking to the people in your audience, they'll probably say, why did it take you so long? But, the first 2 years, it was hand to mouth. The way we generated our first blog posts were I started talking to customers and I listed out the first 100 questions that I got. And we started to write blog posts. Oh, and then we put this thing called a CTA, a call to action. Oh, we actually got leads. One thing led to another. And just to jump really to the next point.
Sure.
And I think we'll talk about this later, but we really hit momentum when 2016, 17, and then the last 5 years, 2017 to 2022, before we sold, we learned a ton and we went from 0 leads to averaging about 25,000 leads a year in a pretty niche small market. And our competitors would just look at us and say, how's that company still in business? And we made the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row, starting in 2018 through 2022. And if we hadn't sold the company, I deeply believe we would still be making that Inc. 5000 list every year in a row. So that hopefully kind of explains the story where we started, but kind of what we went to. And of course, we learned lots of lessons along the way. But the biggest thing is it changed our culture, it changed our company. And if we hadn't used endless customers, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. And certainly for all my employees and all our customers, it would be a different story for them.
Wow. That's an incredible, incredible journey. And I have to ask, so when you sold it, what was it like positioning the company to sell and what made you decide to choose it? Because it sounded like you implement endless customers. AES got into a really great spot, 25,000 leads a year. That's incredible. What was the decision from a leadership standpoint to want to sell, or how did you position your company in a way to be sold?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that we looked at was we had we believe this unique culture where we were all about educating our buyers, and we had built up this system which was very repeatable, very sustainable. And we felt any other company in our market, especially bigger companies, if they could get their hands around this, it would be super beneficial to them in helping them grow, because everyone else in the marketplace really were all about um, conferences, Google ad, feet on the street, large sales team.
Okay.
And in all those areas, AES spent $0. We put all our chips in on producing this content machine, educating customers, and trying to be world class in endless customer framework and implementation. So we thought strategically that would put us in a really good position. And when we started to think about this with the leadership team and we went out, we started to talk to people in the marketplace, it was very different. And when we finally went out to market using an investment banker, the interest was very high, because when people looked strategically at what we were doing, the one thing that stood out was the success we had in using endless customers. As a matter of fact, we would talk to people and we would make a presentation that usually ended up being the bulk of the conversation. How did you do this?
No kidding.
Why does it work?
Mm-hmm.
And we always had to laugh amongst ourselves after the people left, because we'd look at each other and say, this isn't that complicated. uh, and I always have to laugh because, a lot of times, especially in private equity or with bigger companies, they're a lot about the tactics and initiatives
Mm-hmm.
and the underlying tech. And I think sometimes they are looking at the tree in the forest and they're not looking at the forest.
That's a really good point. That does seem to be the case, where like they're looking for that secret sauce or that secret tool that differentiates you. And it almost sounds silly to say it, but you can really differentiate yourself just by building trust, answering your buyers' questions, and working the system. So it's really cool to hear that it actually worked for you, and that was your secret sauce. That's really an incredible journey. So for today, now that you've scaled this company, you've had success with endless customers, you sold the company, what are you up to these days? I know you're very involved in Vistage. You're a chair in Vistage. You're coaching CEOs. Can you tell people a little bit about what you're doing now and how you're using what you've learned to help coach other leaders?
So I'm involved in Central Pennsylvania, small to mid-sized businesses, say, 10 million to 300 million. And I deal directly with CEOs or the business owner. And the structure is I always do one-to-one coaching each month with them. And then with part of the number of clients I work with, we meet in the Vistage platform once a month for a full day.
Very nice.
I think one of the biggest things that I learned through endless customers, and the endless customer community knows this, and it's a lot of what Impact talks about and what a lot of Impact does in their coaching, is asking better questions,
Mm-hmm.
especially asking questions get below the surface, to really get into what are the hesitation, what are the fears, what's really causing this pain for you. I think when we really get to bedrock questions and, below the topsoil in anything we do with a customer, with a potential buyer, the way we approach marketing, the way we approach content, and the way we approach coaching or maybe one-to-ones, I think you help people gain clarity faster. And then actually they're able to make decisions quicker. and it creates momentum.
Yeah.
I think a lot of CEOs and business owners want to be in a peer group or want to get involved in coaching because they're looking for advice. And at least I tell my clients, I'm not here to give you advice. You're the expert in your industry, your business. I'm not here to give you feedback. I'm here to ask questions that no one else is going to ask you. And I think I learned that from this endless customer framework and being exposed to what impact and impact coaches have talked about.
Wow, that's really great to hear. What would you say that with that, like during your journey, there was an aha moment, or do you feel like during your coaching sessions with Impact and learning the system, did you have an aha moment that helped you see the light, if you will? And then also when you're coaching other people now, asking tough questions isn't always the easiest thing to do. So like, did that play into like how you handle these conversations nowadays, and like what was that like for you?
This is going to go back a while.
Okay.
But I do think it does tie into what Impact is doing in their conferences, because this was probably the initial seed. So I think it was early 2014. I went to an event called Remarkable Growth Experience. And at the time, the business was still struggling, but I took my lead software developer, a recent English major hire that was going to be my content person, and my lone inside salesperson to this event, 2-day event, Remarkable Growth event with Marcus Sheridan, Joey Coleman, and Ian Altman. And that 2-day event, for me, cemented the fact that what became Endless Customer Framework was a business philosophy and not a marketing and sales initiative. And I saw how it transformed. And these 3 people who had really no interest in, per se, sales and marketing, they were all in. And it reinforced, from my perspective, and I could tell how passionate and excited and engaged they were afterwards, how we could be truly unique in our industry and not just go with the flow, so to speak. And just because people do it a certain way in your industry doesn't mean you have to do it that way. And we realized by getting exposed to that conference, and I would say in all the Impact conferences, it's not about getting more leads. It's about who you're going to become as a company.
I love hearing that. I really do. And I also think it plays into the buy-in piece, right? And you did a really great job bringing your team to these conferences and bringing your team to Endless Customers Live. What do you say to other business leaders to try to help build that culture and get that buy-in and get people excited about using this system and building trust and just really getting everybody like on the same team?
I think you have to be willing to repeat yourself a lot. You have to be very patient, but I think overall, you have to take Endless Customers or those principles, and it has to become part of your vision. So if you're using EOS, it's part of your vision traction organizer. If you're using scaling up or you're just doing strategic planning, it's got to be part of that vision. And then you, as a leader or CEO or business owner, you then need to be able to connect that to people in the company in the roles that they do and how they can make an impact. And this is where you have to be able to tell stories, and maybe you tell the same story over 100 times. You have to live it. You have to bring the energy and then help people understand the so what. Don't get defensive. Don't tell people what to do, but let them self-discover how this is going to not only make the company much more sustainable, but I believe most people come to work if they realize there are buyers out there and customers just like they are in the real world, and we as a company are really there to help them out, I think most people are reasonable and they'll buy into that. What it can't be is talking about marketing specific terms that people don't recognize in other parts of the company or sales speak. I think you have to break it down and make it understandable, for hourly people, for people who work in the finance department, for engineers, for software developers. And I think sometimes we miss that context, and context is so critical.
That's so true. And you're right. Things can get jargony. It could be sales, it could be marketing. Jargony can get kind of mired and confusing, and then people disconnect or disassociate, and that's when you lose buy-in. So to try to bridge those gaps is really important. And I know that you do a lot of coaching, so I'm curious, how did coaching help you along your journey with Endless Customers, and how does that affect how you coach and train people now in the role that you're in?
So I think it's interesting when you use the word coaching.
Okay.
Because to me, coaching and consultants, people lump them together a lot. What I found and what I believe, like working with impact, here are a couple things that really stuck out to me. And people would say, well, why can't you just self-implement Endless Customers?
Mm-hmm.
Or I work with clients that will just, put up their hand and go, that's marketing initiative. Like, I'll just have marketing kind of handle it and they'll just go through some agency.
Right.
So impact, one thing that impact always did, no matter what type of result we were getting. So we first started working with the sales line, then transferred over to impact. So I think it was, I might have the year wrong, but 2017.
Okay.
Is impact was working with and continued to build up expertise in the implementation of Endless Customers, so they would see it across 25, 50, 100 companies. They could always bring back the best things. And why would you have to reinvent it yourself and find out through experimentation? They could get you from first to third much quicker. The second thing is, no matter what results we were doing, impact coaches were always there to say, okay, that's super. And what are you going to do now moving forward to continue this momentum? They were always pushing us. And they pushed us not by telling us what to do or what they were going to do or lending necessarily their technical expertise.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would ask questions to allow us to self-discover and allow us the things that we had to do to keep improving in what we were already building. A lot of times, at least my limited experience in working now with CEOs and business owners, when they talk about marketing agencies or marketing consultants or sales and marketing consultants,
Mm-hmm.
is it always seems to be an adversarial relationship, whereas we never felt that way with impact. We thought it was a partnership. We understood why impact was there. They were there to make us be a better version of ourselves every day, every week, every quarter, every year. I just don't see that in a lot of other relationships I see with agencies or consultants with companies. So those are a couple of things that really stand out for me. I know some people, and again, this is anecdotally just in my conversations with business owners,
Sure.
CEOs, or my individual experiences too, before impact, is I think sometimes we don't understand maybe the framework. We don't understand what it can do within the entire company.
Mm-hmm.
So what we look for are quick fixes. Oh, oh yes, you're going to implement my Google ad strategy and we're going to get X number of leads. Oh, and then we're going to convert these X number of leads into so many customers. And look, after 6 months or 12 months, this should be our ROI on doing Google ads.
Mm-hmm.
I think that takes such a really narrow view of what, again, I'm going to talk about leaders and CEOs and business owners, what we should be thinking, and probably also challenging people in marketing and sales to think about too. Tactics and initiatives are great, and that's how you make progress, but you have to have something higher aspirational that you're trying to shoot for. So I hope I'm answering this question. I think a lot of consultants just look at it as like, I'm the expert. I've done this 100 times, and here's what I'm going to do. Here's my can of spam. For the next company, I'm going to do it. Impact doesn't do that because, yes, it's a framework and a system you're putting in, but every company is going to do the implementation slightly different. And we never thought that impact was showing up like, here's how you should do it. And they were very helpful in providing frameworks, but I think you could take that and implement it for it to work within your own company.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I like the reference to quick fixes. And I think that's very true. Sometimes when you're struggling or there's troubled waters, you want a quick fix. And usually when you implement a quick fix, it works for a little bit, but you don't get that longevity, that lasting result that you really are looking for. And I think that's a big piece there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the coaching part of it, and I don't know if impact feels this way, but I just feel it takes longer. But if you're really going to look at vision, you need to be thinking long-term and not the next 3 months, not the next year. It's, where are you going the next 3 to 5 years? And what's the foundation you're building that on?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. So for our listeners and our viewers out there that are implementing Endless Customers and for our Endless Customers community, what advice would you give them so that they can get the most out of it? Let's hope they have the vision. They want to go the distance. They want to go long term. What advice would you give to them to be accountable, to continue to be successful, to use and leverage the coaches and just really, squeeze as much juice out of this as possible?
I think the one thing is it kind of goes back. I know I've talked about this before, but Endless Customers wasn't a tactic. It was to achieve our purpose. And
wow,
it was our purpose in action. And I just don't think I can make it any more complex than that. I think for Endless Customers really to have the impact it can, somebody needs to put their full belief in it. And I believe it needs to be the CEO and business owner. Mm-hmm. And they need to step up and say, this is going to be part of our vision. This is what we are as a company. And then I think you can get away from, well, it is working, it isn't working. Oh, we're going to try this, we're going to try that. I think if you think of it as purpose and action, you'll be patient, you'll be persistent, you'll have grit. And in the long run, I just deeply believe, because I see it within the Endless Customer community, but I also see it in businesses that I currently coach, where if they were implementing Endless Customers, I think their path would be far easier in the next 5 to 10 years as opposed to what they're doing right now.
Wow. And so that's a great segue. So what would you say, because listen, business owners, we're all in business. We said this before we started the show. It's not just about making money. That's not what this is about. It's about It's about scaling a company and eventually doing, like, I think the dream scenario is what you did, where you scale a company to a place of acquisition or sale. So what would you say to people out there that are maybe trying to do exactly that? And what advice could you give them, maybe even some of your Vistage colleagues, of like how they can implement the system to get to a place where they can be acquired?
Well, I'm going to again talk about connecting that to the purpose.
Okay.
I also think, again, I've talked about it previously, being patient and persistent,
Mm-hmm.
because when I talk about our journey, although some of the journey was before, the framework was articulated, what Impact is doing today, they can get people up and running far faster than 2012 or 2013 when we first started. But, I tell people it took us 10 years.
Right.
Now, the last 5 years, we had tremendous progress, and that's when the flywheel hit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know anything about Jim Collins and, good to great, these things don't happen overnight. So then you start to peel back the layers. If you're continuing to do these first principles, the customer's the hero, you're there to educate them, you're there to answer their questions unbiased, you want to be transparent, you want to be vulnerable, you're going to build up trust. At the end of the day, you're going to win. Now, you can determine what that win is. That win could be, you go to sell your company. The win could be there's succession planning that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The win could be you do an ESOP. The win could be probably 3 or 4 other options. But I do think the one common thread in that is the endless customer framework and principles set you up for success for any of those options.
I love that. And I love that you need to clearly define those things and think long term, because you're right. To get the flywheel going, it's a slow burn. It takes a bit, but you have to implement these pillars and these practices, and the ramp up gets exponential once you hit a certain breaking point,
Right.
and then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I like, and these will sound so simple. And some people in the endless customer community, because they're living it, and most of them have had tremendous success, especially in the marketing and sales area.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the warning for what I've seen firsthand now the last 3 years in a lot of direct one-to-one conversations with business owners is don't treat it like a marketing campaign, because it isn't. It's not even a sales and marketing initiative. Don't think because you hire a content person and you hire a video person, you can just wash your hands and walk away. Don't be inconsistent. It's got to be a common theme through all your strategic planning. And I can look at someone's vision and strategic plan if they're interested in endless customers, and I can tell if they're going to have success or not. And if it isn't part of their planning, it's just going to be treated as another initiative here on the side that we might stop if it's not working out or not producing results right away. The companies fail or endless customers doesn't get traction is not because the system doesn't work. It's because leaders, owners, and CEOs don't commit. They dip their toe in, but they're not willing to dive in all the way.
Wow, that's incredibly well said. Yeah, and from somebody speaking from experience.
Yes, and all I say is, if I can do it, anyone can.
I love that. And you know what? There is beauty in its simplicity. The first time I read the book, I was almost kind of dumbfounded by how simple the concepts were. But I almost think that's the funniest part about it is so simple that I think people skip right over it and go into the tools, the tech, all the other stuff that distracts them from the fundamentals.
Absolutely, Alex. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I think sometimes if you come in with maybe no marketing or set, maybe not specific tactics, and you've been brought up not in the marketing or sales end, and you're open-minded and curious, I think that the simplicity will stick faster than sometimes people who have technical expertise in a functional area tend not to grasp some things that look obvious to other people.
So I'm curious, as you're implementing endless customers through your journey at AES. We also know you worked with a really great content manager. You had a really amazing staff person. Her name was Bree. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like working with her, building the content, and like the results you got from said content?
It was incredible. It was probably one of my prouder career uh, things that I worked on.
Okay.
Bree joined AES in 2013 as an English major out of college, and she really didn't understand anything about marketing, customer sales. And, I had mentioned the Remarkable Growth event, 2014, she was all in. And I got to watch over an 8-year period her growth, personal growth, maturation, where she really not only understood the framework, but she was outstanding in the implementation. For example, we had a sales and marketing alignment or sales and marketing biweekly meeting. And she would run those biweekly meetings. And over time, what the sales team saw is marketing was there to help make their job easier, and that we really were developing assignment selling content that was helping them close orders. And sometimes that's a tricky thing to navigate,
Mm-hmm.
Especially over time. She went from working with 2 people to working with 10 people.
Oh, wow.
And um, I would say watching those 8 years, and I know Impact had a tremendous, I was going to say impact on, on helping her grow in her personal development, her understanding, or her integration, her implementation of endless customers. And I know we couldn't have gotten there without Bree being a central part of that, and Bree's enthusiasm, and Bree talking about it. And we had a book club. Every new employee had to read They Ask You Answer. And Bree ran the book club. And then the book club grew to run twice a year, where any employee could join. And these conversations were always focused on endless customers, the principles, what it meant for AES. Were we doing it well? Where was it not working? What could we improve on? And she led that. And she always led it from a position of how can she be teaching and educating people internally on what endless customers was really all about.
That's incredible. And she has a strong background, obviously, in English and the written language, which I'm sure just paired perfectly with that, right? So what were some of the results that you saw from the content that she was driving?
So I'll try to talk about some really specific results.
Okay.
So I said, we had reduced the company down to 5 people. So we 7x'd our growth in terms of number of people. And when we sold in 2022, we were at 35 people.
Wow.
7x.
7x.
I mentioned before, 7x. So
7x,
we went from
okay.
5, so 5 to 35. Now,
Wow.
some people might say 5 is a small number to start with, but again, when you're adding that many people on in a period of like 5 years, you want to make sure that everyone's coming on, buys into what we were trying to do around endless customers.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned before making the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row. Our net revenue retention, which is a key metric in a subscription SaaS business, ran at 103%. So it means we were growing 3% just with our current customers every year, even before we added new customers on.
Wow.
Our churn rate was 8% annually, or less than 1% a month. And these are all really good numbers. Now, our net revenue retention wasn't in the range of 120%, but within our industry, it's just something was unheard of. Our net promoter score went from 37 to 75 over the span of 6 years.
Wow. That's incredible.
And I think that's just because of we're listening for questions, we're educating, building trust. And I think that, got us the net promoter score of 75, which, by the way, in selling the company was another key metric that private equity looked at. And our growth rate was 40% annually over the last 5 years. So it wasn't like a one-year wonder.
Right. It was 40% every year, year over year.
And that's why we kept making the Inc. 5000 list and, looking at, if we hadn't, I said this before, I believe we would have still been making the list every year.
That's incredible. Wow.
So
thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing all your insights and all your knowledge here today on the show. We really appreciate your time.
Well, you're welcome. And I hope people can grab some insights that maybe are a little bit different from this. And, I believe Endless Customers is just a framework that can work for any business. And, if you really care about customers, I know it's something you can get your hands around and implement.
Well said. Very well said. Well, we're going to drop Jim's info in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to him, you have any questions for him, he's a great resource and just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to business and Endless Customers. And again, Jim, thank you for your time and for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, Alex. Take care.
All right. And for everybody there watching and listening, this is Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter. We will catch you on the next episode.